Good morning, folks, or good evening, good afternoon, man. Look, I want to make this video about something, man. And I want to get to the kneeling of the flag and supposedly disrespecting the flag and so forth, so on about that issue that a lot of people are having problems with. But first, I want to address this. We have to understand and identify with ourselves of who we are. And I say that to say this. You can't allow a person to put you in a category and you accept it because of the color of your skin. Follow me. A lot of black people that's in America is not African American. Just because you're black, it don't make you African American. African is your nationality, or if that's the place that you're from. Black is your race. You see what I'm saying? You can have a white African American. Not everybody in Africa and born in Africa of their nationality is black. You have white people in Africa that's born there and raised there and their genetics are there. But they have painted this picture when you say Africa, you think of poverty. You think of starvation. You think of the flies and the big bellies that they put on TV of UNICEF and all these other things to make you give a dime for a day. That's programming that they're putting into you. So therefore, when you hear African, that's the first thing you think of. What your president may call a shit country. Yet you go there and get all their resources to make your country better. But that's on another topic. You are a black American. If you were born in Africa and your bloodline is there or whichever, which we are connected to it in some type of way. But if you were born in America, in the United States of America, you are a black American, not African American. Do your research. It's a difference between nationality, race, and ethnicity. Learn those differences, and the answer will be there for you. Now, with the kneeling for the flag thing, a lot of people say when you kneel for the flag, you're disrespecting the flag, which I don't think that's what you're doing. Now, this is just my opinion. You have to understand that a lot of people hide their racism behind patriotism. You understand? A lot of people do that. It's not that some don't know, and it's some that some don't want to learn. But you have that group of people that's all being put in that same bowl. You have some that need to be sit down and taught why you're doing something. You got some that know it, but fail to believe it or want to respect it. You have some, if black people say the sky is green, just because it's a black person saying it, they'll say, oh no, the sky is yellow. They are built on differences. If I agree with you and I like what you say, then that means I agree with your race or I feel like I am being submissive towards you. They have a problem with power. And I think the main thing is that a lot of racists and a lot of other people are so afraid that one day blacks will once do what was done to their ancestors. They can't fathom that. They can't put that in their head. So I must keep my foot or my knee on your neck so that you don't rise up. Now, back to the flag. They kneel for the flag because that's when the most attention can be brought to the injustice of police brutality. They say Black Lives Matter not because nobody else matter. They say Black Lives Matter because they're specifying with their race. We know black lives, we know Asian lives matter, we know Chinese lives matter, we know white, Hispanic, we know all this. But I'm putting in your face that my ethnicity matters, that my race matters, because it seems to me that no one understands that, even some people in my own race. So when I say Black Lives Matter, I'm not just talking to the police officers, I'm not just talking to white people, I'm talking to everybody to say that Black Lives Matter. Act like it. So this is not a disrespect to nobody in the armed forces, because everybody had at some point a grandfather, uncle, or somebody of the family that was in the military. People are trying to get their point across. And you can't tell a person how to do that. If somebody loses their life, or their mother's life, or their father's life, or somebody in the family that you love, and they lose their life and they demise for whatever reason, you can't tell that person how to grieve. You can't say you're not supposed to cry every day. You're supposed to cry on Monday, Thursdays, and Fridays. You can't do that. Because guess what? You never lost a mother, father, uncle, or loved one. So how can you tell me how to grieve? How can you tell me how I feel? You can't, because you've never been in my position. So instead of criticizing my position, come to me and understand why am I doing why am I doing what I'm doing? See, a lot of people have a tendency of criticizing what they don't understand. They call you crazy what you don't understand, instead of trying to find out what is that person meaning and their logic behind, or their motive behind what they're doing. If you don't like it, leave. Where you going to go? Because the last time I checked, this wasn't your country either. You stole this. You murdered. You raped. You killed the people that you found here before you even came and colonized it. This is not your land either. So how can you tell somebody to leave somewhere that's not even yours? All the things that you have the premonition about blacks and what you've been taught about blacks is that main thing that your ethnicity relates with. Your grandfather did those things that you're blaming on blacks. You see what I'm saying? Your founders did that. So when you say that, yes, a lot of blacks do respect the flag, even though the flag never respected them. And that just shows you the love that comes from our race. We are a loving people. We are a forgiving people. So you can't use that. You can't use it. Why don't you play the real song of the national anthem? Not the remix version. Play the original version for what it was wrote. And you can understand how you want me to put my hand over my heart and serve a flag to where that flag meant everything of demise to my people. But yet we still respect it. When we was kneeling down quietly, it was a problem. When we was marching singing "We Shall Overcome," it was a problem. When we was doing things nonviolent, it was a problem. Now that the shit is being burned down, you still have a problem. This is not the right time. You shouldn't have do it at this time. So I ask you guys, when is the right time? Explain to me, when is the right time? We have to understand that. Before the 1700s, black people couldn't even be in the military. It was banned by George Washington. Let that sink in. Once again, in the 1700s, George Washington banned blacks from being in the military. It's not only until they started to lose these wars and battles that they started to recruit some of the free and the enslaved black people. You understand? He banded them. And when the British said, hey, they banding y'all, you come fight on our side and we will give you your freedom, then, okay, Mr. Washington said, let me think about this now. You see what I'm saying? But it's not until then was he faced with that decision to where he changed it. So we couldn't even fight for the country that we're supposed to be free in. It's a difference between being free and having freedom. If I'm in the yard with a fence, I am free to roam around. I have that freedom to roam around, but I'm not free to go outside of that fence line. There's a difference between freedom and being free. And yet we still respect it. You have to look at the history. And you can't look at the history and just say, oh, get over it. We can't get over burning down Wall Street. So we rioting and people are rioting in the streets and burning things. Who started that first? Who started burning down and rioting first? You burned down a whole city of black people. Black people own businesses. They own pharmacies. We all own our hospital. We had all that. Wasn't bothering nobody, but you're afraid. You're afraid that you're going to get tricked out of your position that you did not earn, that you stole. But let's forget about all that, right? So you have to understand the history behind why a person or a race is doing what they're doing. You have to understand when they say Black Lives Matter, what that means. And if you're not taking the time to understand what it means, then don't take the time to give your opinion. Because you're basing your opinion off things that you do not understand. Everything holds a value. And understand what I'm saying. If you was in a car wreck and you heard a certain song on the radio when you entered when that wreck happened, guess what? Every time you hear that song, you're going to think about that day you had that wreck. Because you have attached emotion to that song. Now, when you add the flag to what's happened to Black Americans and African Americans, what you think you're going to get back? Was your ancestors, your grandmother, or your grandfather raped in front of their kids? Was the man in the head of the household raped by another man in front of his wife and kids, what they call bucking? B-U-C-K-I-N-G? This the sick, sadistic shit that was done to us. Yet you blame blacks. We couldn't even get the right to vote, and then when they gave us the right to vote, guess what? You had to write down who was your master, who you work for, and where you live. So even though you had that right to vote, they came see you. They sent the Klan to see you. So I'm going to give you the right to vote, but I'm going to send the Klan to your house to make you vote the way I want you to vote. And that was done out of fear. That's why I tell our people, man, there's no progress without sacrifice. Anything in your life, it don't have to be another human being. It can be school. It can be a job. It can be anything. You don't get a promotion. You don't go to the next level unless you sacrifice something to get there. It's not one thing that you can name in the world that you have that you didn't sacrifice to get. So it's no different in a race. It's no different in success. It's no different in coming out of poverty. It's the same concept. So while these Confederates and these generals and These slave owners or whichever that, when they had their flags wrapped around their neck or wrapped around their head or wherever you had the flag at, you think when you was laying on top of that female or laying on top of that man raping him, and when he was looking at that flag, when you spit in his face, he looking at that flag? When you punched him in the mouth, he was looking at that flag? When you took his kids and burned them and laughed at them, he was looking at that flag? When you set the house on fire and burned his whole family and made him watch, he was looking at that flag? So now when he sees that flag, what he's going to know? Freedom? Fear? Or anger? Learn it, man, before you try to knock it. Learn what's going on. Try to understand what's going on. This is just not for nothing. This is just not for fun. It's meaning behind this. I'm gone, man.